There is a question that lives quietly inside almost every human being who has ever walked this earth. A question we rarely say out loud, but one that hums beneath the surface of our lives like a heartbeat we've learned to ignore. It goes something like this. Is there someone out there, somewhere on this vast and spinning planet, who was meant for me? We ask it in our quiet moments, late at night, staring at a ceiling, wondering if the person we're meant to share our life with is asleep right now, in a city we've never visited, speaking a language we've never learned, living a life completely separate from ours, yet somehow, someday meant to collide with it. This longing isn't weakness. It isn't naivety. It is one of the oldest and most human things about us. Long before we built cities, before we wrote languages, before we mapped the stars, we were creatures who searched for shelter, for food, for safety, and yes, for each other. The desire to find a companion, a partner, a person who understands us in a way no one else does, is stitched into the very fabric of what it means to be alive. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, how much you've achieved, or how independent you've become. Somewhere inside, there is a voice that whispers, I want to be known. I want to be loved. I want to find the one who fits. And so we look. We look in classrooms and coffee shops, in cities we visit for a weekend, in strangers who catch our eye on a crowded street. We look on our phones, scrolling through faces of people we'll never meet, hoping that somewhere in that endless stream is the one face that will change everything. We look at weddings, feeling that bittersweet ache of happiness for others mixed with a private hope for ourselves. We look even when we tell ourselves we've stopped looking, because the truth is, the heart doesn't stop searching just because we grow tired of hoping. There's something almost unbearable about the scale of it, isn't there? This earth holds over 8 billion people. 8 billion stories, 8 billion hearts beating in 8 billion chests, each one carrying its own hopes, its own fears, its own capacity to love and be loved. And somewhere among all of them, impossibly, improbably, there may be one whose story was always meant to intertwine with yours. How do you find one person in a world so large? How do two paths, moving independently through time and space, ever manage to cross at exactly the right moment? And yet, they do. They do it every single day. Two people who had never met, who lived entirely separate lives, who might have grown up oceans apart, somehow end up in the same room at the same time, and something shifts. A conversation begins. A connection sparks. And suddenly, out of 8 billion people, two of them look at each other and think, there you are. I've been waiting for you without even knowing it. That is the miracle we're chasing when we ask, where are you on this earth? We're not asking a geographical question. We're asking something deeper, something almost spiritual. We're asking whether the universe has a plan for us, whether love is woven into the design of things, whether all this longing means something or nothing at all. And I think, if we're honest with ourselves, most of us choose to believe it means something. We choose to believe that this ache, this quiet searching, isn't random, that it's pointing us somewhere, towards someone. Because here's the thing about longing. It doesn't feel like emptiness for no reason. It feels like a compass. It feels like your heart already knows there's a direction to walk in, even if your eyes haven't seen the destination yet. Every person who has ever loved deeply, who has ever found the one, started exactly where you are now, wondering, hoping, searching, sometimes doubting whether it would ever happen for them. And then, somehow it did. So tonight, wherever you are in your own story, whether you're newly hopeful or a little weary from searching, know that this longing you feel is not foolish. It is not a flaw. It is one of the most beautiful, most human things about you. It means your heart is alive. It means you still believe that connection is possible, that love is real, that somewhere out there, someone is living their life, walking their path, growing into the person who will one day recognize you the way you'll recognize them. And so we keep looking up at the same sky, wondering if somewhere beneath it, they're looking up too. We tend to think of love the way we think of a finish line, something we cross, something we finally reach after enough searching, enough waiting, enough hoping. We imagine that one day, the search will simply end, that we'll turn a corner, and there they'll be. And from that moment on, the story is complete. But I want to offer you a different way of seeing this. What if the searching itself is not the obstacle standing between you and love, but is, in fact, part of the love story already unfolding? What if this in-between space, the waiting, the wondering, the nights spent asking where they are, is not empty time at all, but the very soil in which the person you're becoming is being shaped? Think about every meaningful thing you've ever built in your life. A career worth having wasn't handed to you in a single afternoon. A skill you're proud of wasn't mastered in one lesson. Growth, real growth, happens in the accumulation of ordinary days, the practice, the setbacks, the small moments of learning that don't feel significant at the time, but quietly add up to something extraordinary. Love is no different. The version of you who eventually meets the love of their life will not be the same version of you sitting here tonight. And that's not a loss. That's the point. Every heartbreak you've survived taught you something about what you need and what you won't tolerate. Every friendship that showed you real loyalty recalibrated your sense of what connection should feel like. Every lonely night you sat with your own thoughts instead of rushing to fill the silence with the wrong person taught you how to be alone without being desperate. And there is nothing more attractive, nothing more magnetic than a person who has learned to be whole on their own. The searching isn't wasted time. It is training. It is preparation. It is the quiet work of becoming someone capable of receiving the love you're asking the universe for. There's a certain kind of peace that comes when you stop viewing your single years or your years of searching as a waiting room before your real life begins. Your real life is happening right now, in this very stretch of longing. The person who is out there, wherever they are on this earth, is also living, growing, healing from their own past, learning their own lessons, becoming someone more ready for you with every passing year. If you were to meet them today, exactly as you are, would you truly be ready? Or is there still work being done in you, quietly, invisibly, that needs a little more time? This is why chasing love like it's a destination so often backfires. When we treat love as the finish line, we start resenting the miles that come before it. We rush relationships that aren't right because we're desperate to stop running. We settle. Not because we've found the right person, but because we're exhausted from the search and mistake, exhaustion for arrival. But when we understand love as a journey, something we grow into, not just something we stumble upon, everything shifts. The waiting stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like preparation. The loneliness stops feeling like failure and starts feeling like formation. Think of every great love story you admire, real or told. Rarely did it begin with two perfectly finished people meeting at the ideal moment. Almost always, it involved two people who were still becoming, who brought their scars and their half-healed wounds and their unfinished growth into the relationship, and who continued growing together and sometimes apart before finding their way to something lasting. The journey didn't stop when they found each other. In many ways, it only truly began. So if you feel like you've been walking for a long time without arriving anywhere, I want you to consider that you might be exactly where you need to be. Not lost, not behind, not forgotten by love. Simply mid-journey, becoming, day by day, the person capable of loving well and being loved fully. The road itself is shaping you into someone your future partner hasn't even met yet, but will one day be grateful for. Because here's what's true. No one arrives at love as a finished product. We arrive as works in progress, still shaping ourselves in the quiet, unremarkable days when no one is watching. And it is precisely in those days that we become ready for the person who is at this very moment becoming ready for us too. The destination was never the point. The becoming was, sometimes, late at night, it helps to imagine the scale of it all. Picture the earth turning slowly in the darkness, city lights scattered like constellations across continents, millions of windows glowing in millions of homes, and behind every one of those lights, a person living an entire life you will never know about. Somewhere in that vast, glittering expanse, there is someone whose story is quietly moving toward yours, even if neither of you knows it yet. It's a strange and almost dizzying thought that the person meant to change your life completely might, at this very moment, be doing something utterly ordinary, ordering coffee, walking a dog, sitting on a train, looking out the window, wondering the exact same thing you're wondering right now. The world can feel enormous when you're searching for one specific person within it. 8 billion people, thousands of cities, countless languages, entire oceans separating continents. How could two individual lives, each moving along their own path, ever intersect at just the right place and time? It's tempting to look at the size of the world and feel small, to feel like the odds are impossibly stacked against you, like finding the right person is closer to chance than destiny. But I'd like to suggest that the very vastness we find so intimidating is also what makes the moments of connection so extraordinary. Because despite the size of this world, despite the billions of people and the endless static of separate lives, connection happens. It happens constantly. Strangers become best friends. People from opposite sides of the planet, raised in entirely different cultures, speaking entirely different first languages, somehow find their way into the same room, the same conversation, the same shared future. If you stop and think about the specific series of choices, coincidences, delayed trains, canceled plans, and chance encounters that had to align for any long-lasting relationship to begin, it starts to look less like statistics and more like something quietly extraordinary. We rarely call it fate when it's happening to someone else's love story. We call it luck, timing, coincidence. But when you look closely enough at how people actually find each other, it starts to look like the world has ways of drawing certain lives together, threading them along invisible lines that eventually meet. Think about how small the world can suddenly feel when connection does happen. A person moves to a new city for a job they almost didn't take, and that's how they meet their partner. Someone changes their usual route home one day and bumps into someone who becomes the love of their life. A friend of a friend of a friend makes an introduction that seemed insignificant at the time, but turned out to be the hinge on which an entire future turned. These moments happen so often, in so many lives, that it's hard to write them all off as mere randomness. It's as if the world, despite its size, is constantly conspiring in small, quiet ways to bring certain people together, weaving connections through timing, circumstance, and sometimes what can only be described as instinct. This is why I believe the same vastness that feels overwhelming is actually reason for hope, not despair. In a world this large, there is no shortage of possibility. There is no shortage of paths that could lead you toward the person you're looking for. Every day, new paths open, new rooms are entered, new conversations begin. Somewhere in that endless web of human movement, your path and theirs are both shifting, degree by degree, closer to an intersection neither of you can yet see coming. And maybe that's the real comfort in understanding just how vast this world truly is. It means the story isn't over. It means there are still countless unopened doors, countless unmet people, countless chances still ahead for your path to cross with the one meant to walk alongside you. The size of the world isn't a wall keeping you apart from them. It's simply the space in which your story is still being written, still unfolding, still moving toward a moment that hasn't happened yet, but absolutely could. We are, all of us, tiny threads in something much larger than we can fully see, separate, scattered, seemingly disconnected. And yet somehow, again and again, those threads find each other. They weave into families, friendships, partnerships, marriages. They prove, over and over, that distance is not the same as separation, and that far away does not mean unreachable. So when you look out at how big this world is, don't let it discourage you. Let it remind you how much possibility still exists. How many paths have yet to cross? How many rooms have yet to be entered? How many quiet, unremarkable days are still ahead of the one that will change everything? The world is vast, yes, but somehow it always finds a way to make itself small enough for two people meant to meet. There is a particular kind of ache that comes from not knowing when, not knowing if love is a year away or 5 years away, or waiting for you tomorrow morning in the most unexpected place. Of all the difficult parts of this journey, the uncertainty of timing might be the hardest to carry, because uncertainty offers no comfort, no roadmap, nothing to hold on to except the simple, maddening instruction to keep going without knowing how far there is left to go. We are creatures who crave answers. We want to know how the story ends before we've even finished reading the chapter we're in. And love, more than almost anything else in life, refuses to give us that certainty in advance. But I want to gently push back on the idea that not knowing when is the same as not knowing if. So often, we conflate the two. We assume that because we can't see a timeline, the outcome itself must be in doubt, that the silence we're experiencing right now is evidence that love isn't coming, rather than evidence that it simply hasn't arrived yet. Yet if you look closely at almost every meaningful thing that has ever happened in your life, you'll notice something interesting. Very few of the most important moments arrived on the schedule you expected. The job that changed your career came from an application you'd almost given up on. The friendship that shaped you happened because of an unplanned conversation. Timing, in real life, rarely announces itself in advance. It tends to arrive quietly, almost sideways, often after we've stopped trying to force it. This is one of the strange and difficult truths about love. It very rarely responds well to force. You cannot rush a connection that isn't ready to happen. You cannot will another person's path to intersect with yours before both of you have walked the necessary distance to get there. And yet, so much of our instinct, especially when we feel the ache of loneliness deeply, is to try to control the uncontrollable, to force timelines, to chase people who aren't ready, to settle simply because waiting has become unbearable. But I'd ask you to consider that the discomfort of waiting, as real as it is, might be doing something important, even when it doesn't feel like it. It might be the exact process by which you and the person you're waiting for are both being prepared for each other. Patience, in this context, isn't passive. It isn't simply sitting still and hoping something falls into your lap. Real patience is active. It's continuing to build your life, continuing to grow, continuing to say yes to experiences and rooms and conversations, all while releasing your grip on exactly when the outcome will arrive. It's the difference between waiting with your arms crossed, resentful of the delay, and waiting with your hands open, still living fully, still becoming, while trusting that the timing is doing something you can't yet see. Consider, too, that timing isn't only about you. It's about two lives moving at their own pace, healing from their own pasts, working through their own lessons. Maybe the reason your paths haven't crossed yet isn't a flaw in you or a punishment from the universe. Maybe it's simply that they aren't finished becoming who they need to be yet, just as you might not be either. Two people rarely arrive at readiness on exactly the same day. Sometimes one has to wait a little longer for the other to catch up, to heal, to grow, to become capable of showing up the way the relationship will require. And in that waiting, both people are quietly, invisibly, being shaped into who they'll need to be when their moment finally comes. There's a kind of faith required here, not necessarily religious faith, but a deeper trust that just because you cannot see the mechanism of timing doesn't mean it isn't working. Seeds don't announce when they'll break through the soil. Seasons don't rush themselves along because we're impatient for spring. And yet, spring always comes. The waiting is not evidence that it won't. The waiting is simply what comes before. So if you find yourself exhausted by not knowing when, I'd ask you to loosen your grip, just slightly, on needing to know. Let the timeline remain a mystery, and instead, focus on the one thing that is fully within your control. Continuing to become someone ready for the love you're hoping for, so that when the timing does align, and it will, you are standing there, fully prepared to meet it. Because love rarely arrives when we demand it. It arrives when we're finally ready to receive it, and not one moment before. There's a question we ask ourselves so often that it almost becomes background noise. When will I find the right person? We turn it over and over, examining our circumstances, wondering what's taking so long, scanning every room we enter for a sign that this might finally be the moment. But I want to offer a different question tonight, one that's quieter, harder, and ultimately far more useful. Am I becoming the right person? Not the right person in some flawless, unattainable sense, but the right person in the way that matters most. Someone capable of receiving love fully, giving it generously, and staying present through the parts of it that aren't easy. It's a subtle shift, but it changes everything. When we focus entirely on finding, we place ourselves in a passive role, waiting for the world to hand us something, scanning the horizon for a person to appear and complete a picture we haven't finished painting ourselves. But when we focus on becoming, we take the pen back into our own hands. We stop outsourcing our readiness to chance and start doing the quiet, unglamorous work of preparing ourselves for the relationship we say we want. This work often begins in an uncomfortable place, looking honestly at what we're carrying. All of us walk into adulthood holding something, old wounds from relationships that ended badly, patterns we learned from watching the people who raised us, fears about being abandoned or not being enough, habits of guarding our hearts so tightly that even good love struggles to get in. None of this makes you broken. It makes you human. But if we don't take the time to look at what we're carrying, we risk bringing it, unexamined, into the very relationship we've been hoping for, and unintentionally recreating the same pain we were trying to escape. Becoming the right person means being willing to do that inner work before the relationship arrives, rather than hoping the relationship itself will magically fix what's unresolved. It means learning to sit with your own company without panic, so you're not entering a relationship purely to escape loneliness. It means learning to communicate your needs clearly instead of expecting someone to read your mind and then resenting them when they can't. It means healing enough from what hurt you before that you're not projecting old fears onto someone new who has done nothing to deserve them. This isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming aware. Aware enough to catch yourself. Aware enough to grow. Aware enough to show up as a whole person rather than someone looking for another human being to complete them. There's a certain kind of magnetism that comes from people who have done this work, even quietly, even imperfectly. You can often sense it, a groundedness, a self-assuredness that isn't arrogance, but simply peace. These are the people who don't chase love out of desperation, who don't cling out of fear, who can be close to someone without losing themselves in the process. That kind of presence isn't something you're born with. It's something you build deliberately, often through the very seasons of waiting and heartbreak, that once felt like pure loss. And this becoming isn't only about healing what's broken, it's also about growing what's good. It's about strengthening your patience, your empathy, your ability to listen. It's about staying curious about the world so that you have something to bring into a partnership beyond just needing someone to complete you. It's about becoming financially responsible, emotionally steady, spiritually grounded, not because these things guarantee love, but because they prepare you to hold love well once it arrives, instead of gripping it so tightly out of fear that you end up suffocating the very thing you wanted to keep. Here's the beautiful part. While you're doing this work, so is the person you're hoping to meet. Somewhere out there, they are also facing their own fears, healing their own wounds, learning their own lessons about how to love well. You are not the only one becoming. You are both in your own separate corners of this earth, quietly preparing for a meeting. Neither of you can predict the exact moment of. And when that meeting finally happens, it won't simply be two people falling into each other out of loneliness. It will be two people who've done the work meeting in a place of readiness, capable of building something that lasts precisely because they were both ready to receive it. So don't only ask the world to send you someone. Ask yourself, honestly, who you're becoming while you wait. Because the love you're hoping to find will only be as strong as the person you've built yourself into by the time it arrives. The searching was never only about finding them. It was also about finding yourself. There's a particular kind of moment almost everyone recognizes, even if we rarely talk about it out loud. You're going about an ordinary day, waiting in line somewhere, watching the sky change color at dusk, hearing a song that catches you off guard, and suddenly, out of nowhere, a feeling rises up in your chest. A quiet, wordless certainty that says, "It's coming. Don't give up." Something is still moving toward you. We don't always know what to call these moments. Some call it intuition. Some call it hope, refusing to die. Some call it faith. But whatever name we give it, almost everyone who has ever waited for love has experienced this strange, small flicker of reassurance in the middle of uncertainty. I think these moments matter more than we give them credit for. Not because they're proof of anything in a literal sense. You can't hold up a feeling as evidence, but because they serve a purpose. They keep something alive in us that's easy to lose during long stretches of waiting. The willingness to keep believing. And believing, it turns out, is not a small thing. It's the quiet fuel that keeps us open, keeps us saying yes to new experiences, keeps us walking into rooms we might otherwise avoid, keeps our hearts soft instead of letting them harden into resignation. Think about the small signs that so many people can point to, looking back, once they've found the person they were waiting for. A conversation with a stranger that planted an idea they wouldn't act on for another year. A recurring dream that somehow made sense only in hindsight. A moment of déjà vu the first time they walked into a room that would later become deeply familiar. None of these things can be proven as evidence of anything mystical. But collected together, across so many different lives, they paint a picture of something worth noticing. That hope often announces itself in small, quiet ways long before the actual moment of arrival. And this matters because waiting without any sense of forward motion is exhausting, in a way that waiting with hope is not. When we lose all sense that something is moving, even quietly, even invisibly, waiting starts to feel like standing still in the dark. But when we allow ourselves to notice these small signs, a feeling, a coincidence, a moment of unexplainable peace, waiting starts to feel more like walking down a long hallway toward a door we can't yet see, but which we trust is there. The signs don't shorten the hallway, but they do make the walk bearable. They remind us that this in-between space, however uncomfortable, is not empty. It is quietly, invisibly, leading somewhere. I'd encourage you not to dismiss these moments when they come to you. not to explain them away too quickly, not to talk yourself out of the hope they bring, simply because you can't prove they mean anything. There is a difference between naivety and openness. Naivety ignores reality in favor of fantasy. Openness simply refuses to let cynicism close every door before it's had the chance to open. You can be a realistic, grounded person and still allow yourself these small moments of hope. In fact, I'd argue you need them because hope, more than almost anything else, is what keeps us capable of recognizing love when it finally does arrive. Because here's the truth. People who have completely given up on love rarely recognize it, even when it's standing right in front of them. They've built walls so thick out of self-protection that even genuine connection has trouble getting through. But people who have kept a small, stubborn ember of hope alive, even through disappointment, even through long stretches of waiting, tend to recognize love the moment it appears, because they never fully stopped looking for it. Hope keeps your eyes open. Hope keeps your heart soft, enough to say yes when the right moment finally comes. So hold on to these small signs when they come to you. The unexplainable feeling that today matters more than it seems. The song that plays at exactly the right moment. The stranger's passing comment that lodges itself in your memory for reasons you can't explain. None of these things are proof, but they are companionship along the way, quiet reminders, scattered like breadcrumbs, that you are not walking this path alone and that the story is still moving, even on the days it feels perfectly still. Keep noticing them. Keep believing them. They are how hope speaks when it isn't ready to shout yet. I want to pause for a moment on something important, something that can get lost when we spend so much time focused on the search for romantic love. In all this talk of longing, of waiting, of wondering where that one person is on this vast earth, it's easy to accidentally suggest that romantic love is the only love that counts, that until that specific person arrives, our lives remain somehow incomplete, our capacity for love unfulfilled. But I don't believe that's true, and I think it's worth saying clearly. The love of your life isn't only a romantic partner waiting to be found. Sometimes, the love of your life is a version of loving that's been available to you all along, hiding in plain sight simply because we've been taught to overlook it in favor of the more dramatic, more celebrated kind. Think about the people who have loved you without conditions, without waiting for you to become someone else first. A parent who stayed up worrying about you long before you understood what worry even meant. A friend who has known you through every version of yourself, the confident version, the heartbroken version, the lost version, the version still figuring it out, and stayed anyway. A sibling who remembers your whole history, who was there before you had the words to describe your own life. These relationships rarely get the poetry and the songs that romantic love receives, but they are no less real, no less profound, no less capable of sustaining us through the hardest seasons of our lives. If romantic love is the love we search for, these are the loves that often carry us while we search. And then there's the love that matters most in this conversation, precisely because it's the one we tend to neglect the longest. The love we owe ourselves. It's easy to spend years chasing the idea of someone else completing us while quietly withholding basic compassion from ourselves in the meantime. We criticize ourselves in ways we'd never allow someone else to speak to us. We wait to feel worthy of rest, of joy, of gentleness, until some future relationship arrives to grant us permission. But self-love isn't a consolation prize for people who haven't found romance yet. It's the foundation without which romantic love struggles to take root at all. You cannot fully receive love from another person while still believing, somewhere quietly inside, that you don't deserve it. Learning to speak to yourself with patience, to forgive yourself for old mistakes, to treat your own heart with the same tenderness you'd offer someone you deeply cared about. This is not separate from your search for romantic love. It is the very ground that search is standing on. There's a particular kind of freedom that comes from realizing this. It takes the crushing weight off the search, the sense that your entire life is on pause until one specific person arrives to unlock it. Instead, life becomes rich and full right now, populated by different forms of love that are already present and available. The love of old friendships, the love of family, however complicated, the quiet, steady love of simply being kind to yourself on hard days. Romantic love, when it does arrive, doesn't have to carry the entire burden of making your life meaningful. It becomes one more form of love added to a life that was already full of it, rather than the single missing piece your happiness has been hanging on. This also changes what you bring into that eventual relationship. Someone who has spent years starved of love, expecting a partner to single-handedly fill every emotional need, often brings a kind of desperation into romance that puts enormous pressure on the relationship to save them. But someone who has cultivated love in many forms, friendship, family, self-compassion, brings a fuller heart into their romantic relationship. They're not asking their partner to be their entire world. They're inviting their partner into a world that was already rich, already meaningful, already full of love in different shapes and forms. So while it's natural, even beautiful, to long for that one specific person out there on this earth, I'd ask you not to let that longing convince you that love is absent from your life until they arrive. Look around. Love may already be closer than you think. In the people who've stayed, in the friendships that have carried you, and most importantly, in the way you're learning, slowly, to be gentle with yourself. Because sometimes the love of your life isn't someone you're still searching for. Sometimes it's someone you already are, quietly waiting to be loved by you first. We've spent this time together, walking through something that so many people carry silently, rarely saying out loud how deeply it weighs on them. The longing for someone out there on this earth, the frustration of not knowing when, the quiet fear that maybe the search will simply go on forever, that maybe some people are just meant to keep looking without ever arriving. I don't believe that's the whole story, and I don't think, deep down, you believe it either. If you didn't still believe, even a little, that love was possible for you, you wouldn't have spent so many nights wondering about it in the first place. Hope doesn't visit people who've truly given up. It only visits those who, somewhere underneath the tiredness, are still holding the door open. So let's talk, finally, about faith. Not necessarily in the religious sense, though for some of you it may be exactly that, but faith in the broader sense of trusting something you cannot yet see. Faith that the waiting has not been wasted. Faith that the timing, however confusing it feels from the inside, is doing something meaningful. Faith that somewhere on this earth, in a life completely separate from yours right now, someone is also looking up at the same sky, wondering the same thing about you, even if neither of you has any way of knowing it yet. I know faith can feel like a fragile thing to hold on to, especially after disappointment, especially after love that didn't work out the way you'd hoped, especially after long stretches of silence where nothing seems to be moving at all. But faith was never meant to be built on certainty. If we could see the whole path in advance, it wouldn't require faith at all. It would simply be knowledge. Faith is what we practice precisely because we can't see the ending yet. And practicing it, choosing it again and again, especially on the hard days, is what keeps us soft enough, open enough, ready enough to recognize love when it finally does step into our lives. Think about everything we've talked about tonight. The way this longing connects every person on this earth, whether they admit it or not. The way the search itself has been shaping you, quietly, into someone more capable of loving well. The way this vast world, despite its overwhelming size, keeps finding ways to bring certain people together against every statistical odd. The way timing moves on its own schedule, one we can't control but can learn to trust. The way becoming the right person matters just as much as finding one. The way small, unexplainable moments of hope keep showing up, refusing to let us fully give up. And the way love, in its many forms, has probably already been present in your life all along, even while you wait for one particular kind of it to arrive. All of this points toward the same quiet truth. You are not standing outside the story of love, waiting for permission to enter it. You are already inside it. You have been inside it this whole time, through every friendship that shaped you, every lesson that grew you, every small moment of hope that kept your heart from hardening completely. The romantic love you're waiting for is not the beginning of your story. It's simply the next chapter of a story about love that's already been unfolding for your entire life. And so, as we come to the end of this evening, I want to say something directly to that person, wherever they are on this earth right now. Maybe they're close, maybe they're impossibly far, maybe they're living a completely different life at this very moment, unaware that anything is about to change. Maybe they've faced their own heartbreaks, their own long nights of wondering, their own quiet questions about whether love was still possible for them too. To that person, I want to say, keep going. Keep becoming who you're meant to become. Keep believing, even on the days it feels foolish. Because your paths are moving, degree by degree, closer together, even now, even in this very moment, even if neither of you can feel it yet. And to everyone here tonight who has carried the same longing, who has asked the same question in the quiet of their own heart, hold on. Not with clenched fists, not with desperation, but with open hands and a soft, steady kind of hope. Keep living fully, keep growing, keep saying yes to the life in front of you, trusting that the love you're waiting for is doing the same thing, somewhere out there, in their own corner of this world. Because love has a way of finding its way home, even across oceans, even across years, even across every doubt we've ever carried about whether it would come at all. So wherever you are tonight, on this earth, under this same sky, I hope, with everything in me, that our paths are already moving toward each other.